Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dang.
Hello.
Wait, one more time.
Okay.
Vulnerability
Yeah.
is the birthplace of innovation. Okay, that makes sense. Creativity and change.
You did that a lot better than me. I don't appreciate
like
that.
that.
I do not
I like
appreciate
that.
you doing that. But anyway, quote by the great author, Brene Brown.
Who I need to know more about. Yeah, she's new to me, but that quote just cut right to the chase. Ooh.
I had did some reading of hers. Some years ago. I need to actually revisit these things, but she has a whole bunch of almost sounds like self-help kind of, mind-provoking, thought-provoking type of books and quotes and all this. Anyway, I love that. Anyway, welcome to Upright Citizens, everyone.
Welcome to Upright Citizens. Reuben, we're in St. Louis together.
Can you believe it?
We're live.
It? That was a real anyway, yeah. We're doing it live for the second time.
I guess we're not really live, but you and I are in person,
in
the same room together.
Yes.
Believe that.
It's a pleasure. After 70-something episodes, it's good to do this one more time. Appreciate it.
And talking about a serious topic.
Hello.
Vulnerability is okay. Being vulnerable is okay.
It's
is what we're talking about today. And there's just so much to unpack inside of that.
Yep.
But going back to that quote, just something else. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. That means a lot, and I think that to each individual person that hears that quote, that's going to mean something different, obviously, because we're all different people. You know what I mean? But let's just talk about what it means to be vulnerable.
Hello.
Just real quick. So I pulled up the definition.
Please.
Going straight to Webster's.
Go ahead.
Pulled out my online dictionary, dusted off the page, and turned it right to vulnerable. Susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm, or in need of special care, support, protection because of age, disability, or risk of abuse or neglect. Like all humans.
Hello.
To some degree,
Yep.
right? So most folks don't like getting hurt. I think that's safe to say. Some do. Some are into it. That's another episode.
Yeah,
maybe. So we protect ourselves, but we all do get hurt. It's inevitable. We're gonna get hurt, and that shared experience is part of the human condition.
Right. But what exactly gets hurt? What would you say is the main thing get hurt when we feel vulnerable?
Right. The inflated ego.
Hello.
Yes, exactly. What we think of ourselves.
Yes. It always seems to go back to the ego.
Yeah, all day.
That sense of pride that we all have, right?
And pride's not a bad thing.
No.
Not necessarily, but it can get inflated and get out of whack. So we're talking about being balanced here.
Yes,
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
doubt. And, and here we are being vulnerable on Upright Citizens today.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with you. Let's start with you.
Vulnerability.
Do we want to be honest and
well, that's
talk about, our egos and getting in check,
Oh, for sure. I've got one that happened just recently.
Hello.
Very recently. Not far from here, actually. No names are going to be used, and in this conversation here. But I'm 42. I've been playing bass for a long time, and I've gotten, we all have in our heads after we've been doing something so long. Of
course.
I've got this, like I'm just going to enjoy this. It's going to be fun.
Hello.
And perhaps, maybe there's not the, anyways, on stage, playing with a name that you would know, head front person, saxophonist.
Yes.
Too much. And starting off the tune, and the tune is starting off right here. And I'm like, great, that's great. It's a Mingus tune, Fables of Abbas. Now I'm definitely getting into it. There's no getting away from this now. And I started off, I'm like, okay, cool. I've heard this a million times. Damn.
Good about it.
Dang. The dang. The dang. You're dragging.
Right.
On stage,
Right.
in front of the crowd, and I'm like,
There you go.
oh, no, I'm not. No,
Right.
I'm not. So I play a little louder, and I play a little bit more on top,
Right.
The complete, what do you call it? Rubber band effect, or,
Hello.
just like coming back
Right.
instantly trying to protect who
Yeah.
I thought it was,
Right.
Instead of just being like, okay, that was just happening.
Right.
How do I respond?
But that's a very human thing.
Yeah.
Have grace with that. That's echo.
Thank you. Yeah.
preview
But that was completely, the way I took it and the way I've talked about it since.
Right.
Perhaps even here just now, you can hear in my inflection,
Right.
still a little bit damaged thinking about
You've
it.
been
Do you know
living
what I mean?
with it.
Yes.
You've been living with it.
Yeah, definitely.
What did you learn from it, if anything?
I think I'm still learning from it. What I didn't learn was not to drag.
Right. There you go.
What was
Even
maybe
though you didn't think you were dragging, though, right?
I've been back. I've checked the tape. It was fine. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, exactly. I didn't think I was dragging, but it doesn't really matter.
No.
Obviously, that's not the point. The music is
Right.
the point, and to come
Right.
together and really make the best of each instance of the music.
Right.
And so not perhaps, for at least the rest of that song and the rest of the set, unfortunately, that was in my mind. Because that was the very first song of the set, unfortunately, too. And so that stuck. What I'm learning is that all of that's okay.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? The way I responded, I used to think like, oh, why am I getting so upset about this?
Right. Right.
That's okay.
That is okay.
It's totally fine.
That's totally fine. You said a key thing, about learning, and looking ahead at each instance and learning from the last one, hopefully.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of that a little while ago, and I can bring my own experience to this, is that we as in a great musician, see, I didn't give up the instrument name like you did, great musician who I've played with for a long time. This has happened many years ago, but we had played together for a good, I don't know how long, maybe 15 years,
Oh, wow. Okay.
15 to 20 years, all around the world. One of my very, very good friends, one of my bestest of friends. And we were just at the table eating, talking, right? And he pulled a little nugget out that stung me. You know what I mean? Stung me, but it was in passing.
Okay.
Yeah. He probably doesn't even know. I never talked about him, but it helped me in my development, I think, in my process.
Yeah.
He said, I forget how we got into it, but something along the lines like, yeah, that person isn't consistent. Kind of like how you are, Reuben. He said it kind of like how you can be, Reuben, and the whole conversation just kept on flowing, even though I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it was just a punch in my gut, and I was like,
I can imagine.
Oh,
Yeah.
but and he was just kind of just in a flow of conversation, eating dinner, but that stuck with me. That stuck with me. I remember going back to my room and being like, he's right.
Okay.
He's absolutely right. Because it was something that probably in the back of my head, but hadn't come to the forefront. You know what I mean?
Sure.
At that time.
Yeah.
Especially when you're kind of like, especially just all over the place, doing this, doing it, and you're like, okay, next. And like paying attention to that kind of detail and just keeping it consistent wasn't, I thought it was part, but it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't in the forefront of my thought and my process.
Sure.
But I felt I needed that at that time.
Interesting.
Like after that, because it's also very hard to say I'm gonna just wake up and be consistent, right?
Of course,
right?
yeah.
No, it's not. It's a process. But I made that muscle. Like I worked on that muscle to like really be conscious about it, whatever that took. To be a little more consistent. Especially it's hard in creative music to say that you want to be consistent, especially when you're trying to push some kind of boundaries, especially, depends on the kind of players and the music you're playing, as I said. But it really stuck with me, and it has stuck with me to this day, even just explaining this story, that is. So
Now, without hearing the context of the conversation, do you think it was in reference to consistency can mean a lot of different things? Were we talking about playing consistency? Were we talking about like showing up at call time consistency?
No, it was more playing.
Okay.
It was more playing because it was amongst the conversation about other people who were consistent.
Okay, I see.
People who were consistent, and I was the
that's especially.
Yeah,
I
you
can
know
see
what I
that.
mean?
That means something different.
And I
Yeah,
was like,
entirely. You don't want to hear that.
And but as a matter of fact, I should call him up and tell him thank you. Also bleep you, but thank you.
Life lessons.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, life lessons is all right. That was my little nugget.
But yeah, we build up these walls though. I wrote down, we're always taking notes and trying to get our minds around what we're going to talk about. And I wrote something here. We build up walls around us to keep ourselves safe from known and unknown dangers, both physical and emotional, of course. And I don't think we need to talk too much about the physicality of being in danger on the stage.
Nah.
these days. But there's a lot of emotional, you put yourself on the line.
Yeah.
We have to be vulnerable. We have to be vulnerable on the stage.
Right.
And, if we do that, we can get hurt.
Yeah.
We can get hurt. Do you know what I mean? We might fall. We might make a mistake. Not physically fall. We might falter in the music. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And there's quite a lot that can come out of being vulnerable like that, right? Because when you bring down those walls, you're not just allowing anybody that you want to come in. Like if we have the walls up, okay, you can come in. This is cool. We can deal with this.
Right.
You get rid of those walls, and you're allowing almost everything in.
Yes.
Right? For better or worse.
Endless possibilities.
Yeah, definitely.
Endless possibilities.
And if we don't open those walls, then we might not know what's available out there.
You dig?
That's the biggest thing.
You dig?
So,
You dig? So, I mean, what are some instances of musicians being safe?
right. So the opposite of vulnerability,
Opposite
right?
of,
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
just kind of being, segueing, having the yin and, what's that called? The yin and yang, I guess, or something? Yeah? Is that what you call it?
I think that's a
Yin and yang?
thing. That's
Help us out.
is that a thing? Yin
Yang?
yang? Yes,
Yin
yes.
and yang. Thank you. That's Adam Mattis, everyone, from You Hear It Podcast, Open Studio.
Big shout out to Open Studio, who is sponsoring today's episode of Upright Citizens. And
Anyway.
so now that we've got that safety issue out of the way, we're not worried about some safe things on stage. Autopilot.
Hello.
I think that's a big one. If you're like, oh, this worked last night, it's gonna have to work tonight, right? We've talked about this before, right? Every instance, we've got to be there. Relying, and that also means like relying on what works. Licks, feels, volume, even. Do you know what I mean? If you're just going in, like set it. You can always say, I'm going to start here and see what happens. Of course, you know what I mean. Kind of get like some type of an idea what you're trying to do. But I think if you just stick in that lane, and you don't open yourselves up to it, then it's gonna be trouble. You're being too safe.
Would you say? I was trying to think about the licks part. Have you ever been a lickster? Have you been?
Yeah,
Yeah?
for sure. I think sometimes. Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
There's
like a go-to kind of like I got the I feel this. What?
I don't know. I don't think too much on that front. Hopefully, and I'm a man that's heard me a bunch is here right now too. So I'm sure I can get some direct feedback from that. You might have to have a guest on the next episode if we're really going to get vulnerable.
Right. Mhm.
I think yes. I think that's a deep one to talk about. And
Yeah.
it depends on the situation for sure
Make
too.
a note real quick.
But if
for
we're talking
another
about
topic, yeah. Anyway, great.
I mean, if we're talking about walking, yeah, there might be a few things that I just in the lineage, the language type
Yeah.
of concept. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
But it's subconscious though.
I think so. Yeah, and I think it's more. It's not so much saying this is safe here. I can plug in this lick into this chord. It's more of like hearing
Right.
that language or those types of licks.
Right,
that can come
right,
out. And
right.
so that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've been a licks. Yeah, I'm gonna say I have before. Certain places where you go for a certain type of sound or a certain type of shape, maybe
Right,
on a
right.
certain chord. And
I mean, because
yeah.
I've known a lot of players who that I could hear that at least. I don't know if they would even describe it as licks or that they even doing that. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Because
sure.
I'm saying this also because I remember doing either a lesson or something with a bassist some years ago, and a lot of times in my lessons we just have some fun and just play.
Yeah.
Just play together, we trade. And this one time, we were playing, and I don't know if it was a blues or whatever, and the student, he stopped me. He's like, "Oh, what's that lick you just played?"
Ooh.
And I was like, I don't even remember what I just played.
Yep. Absolutely.
I said, I don't even remember what I just played because it was in the moment.
I've definitely been on that student side. I've done that to people before.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Even piano players or drummers, like, what did you just do there? Like,
Right.
what is that? You know?
Right. But he asked me that, and I was like, yeah, I generally, maybe there are some licks that I might definitely just in my, being and my playing, but I've never come from that aspect of playing, you know, I've never actually heard something and said, I want to try that and put it in my voice. Maybe it inherently from just listening to so much music, yes, it came into my, my playing and got under my fingers. That's how we learn, right?
Definitely.
But never like thought about it a lot. I mean, trust me, I'm saying this because I've been, I've played with quite some musicians who have a certain thing that they'll do, as you said, same solo, this kind of like, this thing will happen.
Particular, yeah.
And it's always interesting to me. It's there's no wrong or right when you come to that. I think,
of course,
it's an aesthetic, something that you choose to do, you choose not to. And I don't know how we got.
I think there's more like the conversation of tendencies or particular like types of or directions that somebody might go. Like the first person that came to my mind was Keith Jarrett. I mean, I can't think of a Keith Jarrett lick.
Hello.
Do you know what I mean? And there's many musicians.
Yeah.
Maybe that's incorrect, but and many great musicians that we can tell when we hear Dave Holland. By the content of what he's playing, let alone the sound and the time feel and stuff like that. But we can kind of understand like the organizational process of somebody like a Dave Holland, and I'm using him as an example.
No doubt.
But another big safety type of thing that we were talking about, or at least that came to my mind, is like mental chatter. Judging yourself, or like when you're judging yourself, you try to protect yourself even more and not really be open. Do you know what I mean? Or others while you're playing, which again is going back to that ego. So if you're playing with somebody and like it could go either way.
Yes.
So if you're playing with somebody that's very well seasoned, like sitting down with a drummer that's been on 1,000 records, played with everybody, and then I'm playing with them, I'm going to be like, the balance, where is the balance? But that's not really the point, but that's initially where my mind goes. Am I good enough to be in this situation?
Yeah, well,
and that's a very common.
You got the call. Just be confident enough that you are.
Right.
Or there was no one else. I mean, but
it's all about being available. Yeah.
I mean, as we always go back to this. Bass players are always thrown in those positions. I think me sitting in this chair, vomiting bass on Open Studio Network.
What's up?
Comes from just being available at the right time, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, right?
Sure.
I mean, I definitely didn't deserve to be in the places I was at the time I was coming onto the scene. I couldn't play.
I mean, I don't think there's any verifiable evidence to back this up. Reuben. I don't think there's any proof of that.
Well, it was anyway. I don't know. Let's not go down memory lane. But sure. But it's about also just yeah.
What about teaching?
Oh wow!
Because we can be vulnerable. We're both educators. You just talked about being with the student, and we've got a great course on Open Studio, of course. We talk about education. What about being vulnerable when we share or try to teach?
So I'll tell you, for me, as far as in teaching, I think for years I felt really vulnerable because I didn't come from your traditional background of learning to play the instrument technically, learning chords and a certain kind of way. I didn't
like
come
being in a conservatory situation,
being a conservatory or getting tutelage on a consistent basis.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I had some, but I was thrown into the fire very early.
Right.
And I think most of my development, or most of what I learned came from just doing it.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I learned a lot in that. I always say, you can't teach experience, right? So it's like my experience kind of taught me, just in the moment.
Absolutely.
So I'd say when I would come to teaching, I would always feel like, oh shoot, man, I didn't really come from a traditional background of
that's so
getting a certain tutelage. If I'm giving this to them, is that that might not be good for them? Oh no, I would be in my head about that.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm talking about I'd be doing a masterclass by myself for university students, sitting there, and before I go in, I'm like, should I be here? Why are they paying me to do this? But then I would go in, and it's just all that would just leave, though.
Yeah, for sure.
It would just leave, and I'd do my thing. And countless times I had people, students be like, wow, I learned so much today. Oh, you're so, But you know what? It still come back the next time I did it.
Really? Wow.
Yes. For years, it was like that. It was just that same voice that you're not worthy because you didn't go through the same,
Whereas
lineage and time put in to learn a certain kind of way. But experience was on my side.
Yes,
you know, fortunately, you know what I mean. And I got to get over that, you know.
I'm saying sitting on this side, hearing this for the first time, like you expressing that, like that level of anxiety about being in front of, university students or the professors that are there as well.
It would, it wouldn't even just, it'd be just Joe Schmo.
Okay.
Ask me for a lesson on not only even on Zoom, in person, whatever.
Yeah.
I would get this anxiety and feeling vulnerable in that moment. Be like, should I be talking to this? Am I?
But to get outside of that university, academic type of box, what I was going to say is like sitting on this side, hearing that,
right?
What you would have to bring to a situation like that, I would hands down 100% much rather hear what you have to say,
right?
Than hear like something that's in the box,
right?
Academic. We've quantified all of this of how you're supposed to do it or how we think you should do it. It could be even based upon, the masters or whatnot, like have some really good reasoning behind it.
Right.
But it doesn't replace that experience.
No.
So
I mean, I was lucky to have that to pull. And then over the years, I was like, well, those things that you think you lack, I mean, let's get to it, man. Let's work on that.
Okay. you took it positive.
Yeah. And then and then shaped into anyway. There we go.
Yes, indeed. Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's so much out there that we can, be vulnerable about. But I think we've hit on some good stuff today.
Yeah,
and the point being, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Hello?
It's okay to live into that, right? And we're going to learn from it and
Yes.
lean into that vulnerability.
Hello.
Yeah.
And with that,
You've got a great quote here,
I got
too.
one more quote for y'all.
Yes.
Again, by the author Brene Brown. Vulnerability. No, I said that earlier. Cut. Maybe we could edit this. Anyway, I got one more for you. Another author. Come on, Reuben, get it together.
You got it.
Got another one for you by Brene Brown. When we dare to drop the armor that protects us from feeling vulnerable, we open ourselves to the experiences that bring purpose and meaning to our lives.
Beautiful.